Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. Today is the anniversary of the birthday of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we will be playing FDR clips throughout the next 3 hours, just to say hi and remind you of that. And today being Friday, it is time for Brunch with Bernie. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us, the independent from Vermont, who I call America's senator, and I really think you are, Senator. Welcome back to the program. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to click the right button here for you, Senator Sanders. There you go. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Thank you. So what's on your mind today?
Well, it was a very, very busy week in Washington, and it will be a busy week next week as well. As I have said many times, I think that it is terribly important that the federal government be as aggressive as possible to help reverse the decline of the American middle class. And right now we have obscene levels of income and wealth inequality. I have been saying, based on the best studies that I saw, that since the Wall Street crash of 2008, 95% of all new income generated went to the top 1%. Well, Tom, I was wrong. It's not 95%. It turns out to be 100%. So you have all of the new income being generated goes to the top 1%. We have the top 1/10 of 1%. Top 1/10 of 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. One family, the Walton family of Walmart, owning more wealth than the bottom 41% of the American people. So given that reality of a 40-year decline in the American middle class, of more people living in poverty today than almost any time in the history of this country, and huge disparities in terms of income and wealth, what do we do as a nation? Well, it seems clear to me that we have to be aggressive in developing government policy that stands for working families, not just the billionaire class. So we introduced this week, along with the AFL-CIO and the American Society of Civil Engineers, probably the most comprehensive infrastructure bill ever presented, certainly in many, many years. And as I think every listener knows, the infrastructure in America, and by that I mean our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our rail system, our airports, our dams, our levees, they are in bad shape. And they are getting worse because we're not putting in the kinds of money we need to rebuild them or maintain them. So we have proposed a $1 trillion 5-year program to rebuild America's infrastructure. And I just want people to imagine what America would look like, where from California to Maine, we had people working to develop cutting-edge efforts to improve our technology. What does it mean? It means that the roads we would be driving on would not be full of potholes. We would not have the kind of congestion, traffic jams that we currently have. Our bridges would not be in disrepair. We'd have good water systems, wastewater plants. In major storms, our levees would not be in danger of collapsing. And when you do that, Tom, when you put $1 trillion over a 5-year period, what the economists tell us is that we can create or maintain 13 million jobs. And when real unemployment in America today is at 11%, youth unemployment around 18%, African-American youth unemployment 30%, it's going to put a whole lot of people to work. And when those people get to work, they're going to start paying taxes. And they're going to start investing and purchasing goods and services in their own communities. So it could have a profound impact, this legislation, in making America more productive, safer, more efficient, and putting a lot of money into the hands of working people to improve the standard of living in our country. So I'm very proud that we had the support for this legislation from the American Society of Civil Engineers, and they are the people who have been doing all the work over the years, kind of documenting just in what kind of poor shape our infrastructure is, and the AFL-CIO, which obviously understands that we need to create millions of jobs. So that's an issue that we're working very hard on. As many listeners know, yesterday the Senate voted to approve the Keystone Pipeline. They got 62 votes. They needed 60. I have helped lead the effort against the Keystone Pipeline for many, many reasons. The key reason being is that the scientific community has been explicitly clear, and there's no longer a debate, that climate change is real. It is caused by carbon emissions and human activity. It is already causing devastating problems in the U.S. and around the world in terms of floods, droughts, extreme weather disturbances, rising sea levels, which threaten coastal communities all over the world. And what the scientific community is telling us is that if we don't get our act together and cut carbon emissions, that situation is only going to get worse. And to my mind, it is beyond comprehension that the first order of business of the Republican Senate is to pass this Keystone Pipeline, which supports the increased production and transportation of some of the dirtiest fuel on the planet. So the passage of this bill goes directly in opposition to what scientists tell us we have got to do if we're going to reverse climate change. So, that is, to me, a huge bill. I believe the president is going to veto it. I think we have the votes in the Senate to sustain that veto, and that is something we have got to do. Very, very important. And I also, during the bill, the debate over the bill, I introduced an amendment that called for 10 million solar rooftops, an additional 10 million solar rooftops throughout our country. We have made, as you know, significant progress in the last many years in terms of increasing the production of solar energy in this country, but we have a long way to go. And one of the problems is that many people would like to have solar on their rooftops. They just can't afford to do that. We have proposed as a 15% rebate. So if you want to put solar in, you will get a rebate. You won't have to pay the full cost of for the panels. This would be a real stimulus, I think, to the solar industry, create jobs in the industry, but also allow us to shut down some of the 20 dirtiest coal-burning plants in America. So it would be a good step forward in terms of reversing climate change, creating jobs, and ending pollution. And we only got 40 votes on that amendment. We needed 60, but we got 40. I also offered another amendment, basically to challenge the Republicans as to whether or not they accepted the scientific opinion about climate change. And the resolution was a very simple one. It says, do you believe that climate change is real, caused by human activity, causing devastating problems, that we need to transform our energy system? Do you know how many Republicans I had who voted for that, Tom?
I'm guessing 0?
That's about it.
Yeah.
Got 0. Yeah. And that takes us to another issue. How does that happen? Do all Republicans reject science? The answer is no. Then you get to the issue, which is maybe the most important issue overall, and that is the dismal state of campaign finance in America. I expect that many of the listeners and viewers read the reports, front-page stories, that the Koch brothers plan to spend some $900 million in the next election. $900 million. Now, that's what they say that they plan to spend along with their other billionaire friends, but that doesn't mean really anything, because the Koch brothers are worth $85 billion. Their wealth went up by $12 billion last year. So whether it's $900 million or 14, or $1.5 billion or $2 billion, doesn't make a whole lot of difference to them. It's kind of chump change because they are worth so much. And I think people are not fully understanding the extent of what this means. This means that you have the second wealthiest family in America with unlimited resources basically taking over the United States government. And this is an issue that should alarm everybody, regardless of their political views.
That is not democracy.
That is not democracy. That is called oligarchy, as a matter of fact.
There you go. Senator Bernie Sanders with us in our national town hall meeting here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Brunch with Bernie. We'll be back with your calls for Senator Sanders right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz. It's a great news website. You can check out his Facebook page. Just plug Bernie Sanders into Facebook. Welcome back. 15 minutes past the hour. Senator Sanders on the line with us. Senator, before I take my your first call here, can I read you 2 sentences from Henry Wallace back in 1944?
Sure.
This is, he wrote an op-ed for the New York Times and on April 9th, 1944, and he said, quote, he's talking about the billionaire class, he said, they claim to be super patriots, but they would destroy every liberty guaranteed by the Constitution. They demand free enterprise, but are the spokesman for monopoly and vested interest, and their final objective toward which all their deceit is directed is to capture political power so that, using the power of the state and the power of the market simultaneously, they may keep the working man in eternal subjection.
Well, he wrote that in when?
April 9th, 1944.
Well, there you go.
Vice President of the United States.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Anyway,
no, I think that's. Thank you for reading that. Look, I use the word. I think some people think I'm overly dramatic and that I'm alarmist. But I think what the Koch brothers, and not just them, and their billionaire colleagues are about, is forming an oligarchy in America. And the oligarchy, as Wallace reminded us, is economic. So you have on Wall Street now 6 financial institutions that have assets equivalent to about 60% of the GDP. They issue, these 6 financial institutions, about half the mortgages in America and 2/3 of the credit cards. And economic power for these guys is not enough. Now they have to translate that into political power, which they have always had to a significant degree. But with Citizens United Supreme Court decision, that opened the floodgates. And now the Koch brothers are just, and people should understand, when they talk about spending money on campaigns, that's only one part of what they do. These guys control think tanks. They control all kinds of organizations in America, whether it is veterans organizations, whether it is senior organizations, or whether it's organizations that deal with taxation or deal with constitutional issues. They have their hands in virtually every organization dealing with every aspect of American life. So, Tom, their reach is far greater. In fact, on my website or at the last buzz, if people want to see a very good article that appeared in ProPublica, and it's called How Dark Money Flows Through the Koch Network, they talk about the dozens of organizations that they either control or have a significant influence on. So when you see some guy on television who's an economist, there's a reasonably good chance that he's paid for fully or in part by the Koch brothers. That is what their reach is. Okay, let's take some questions.
Okay. Well, we only have 50 seconds till the break right now.
All right. So but I would say, if people are interested in healthcare, if they're interested in education, if they're interested in the economy, if they're interested in climate change, Koch brothers and these other guys, they're there on all of these issues. And when you have that much money, what Republicans have got to do is say with the issue of climate change, do you really want to rebuff the Koch brothers? Do you really want to stand up to them and then know that you will be primaried in your next election? You're not going to get the support from the big money interest. And what the Republicans are saying, no, we're willing to defy science so as not to antagonize big energy and the Koch brothers. And that's a pretty scary set of circumstances.
Yeah, endanger future generations. It's astonishing. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. We'll be picking up your calls. My apologies for taking the first question myself here. We'll be picking up your calls right after this. Stick around.
I should like to have it said of my first administration that in it the forces of selfishness and of lust for power met their match. I should like to have it said, wait a minute, I should like to have it said of my second administration that in it these forces met their master.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you on FDR's birthday. And who better to have on the air on FDR's birthday than Senator Bernie Sanders? I think you're the heir to FDR's mantle, Senator, if I may gush. Anyhow, should we pick up some phone calls?
Let's do it.
Okay. Ron in Fairhaven, Vermont. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
There's an enormous amount of corporate money which is called campaign contributions. Shouldn't it be called bribery?
Well, Ron, the answer is yes and no. Bribery means that I give somebody, $10,000 and they vote my way because of that $10,000. What you have now is much more subtle and in many ways more dangerous, because it's not a question of very, very few members of Congress will take a check or take some cash and put it in the bank. That happens very, very rarely. What happens now is it's actually more dangerous, because what it is campaigns become dominated by wealthy and powerful people, and you end up doing the bidding of those people in a broad, general sense. It's not that you get money for a vote. You become part of their camp. Your survival is dependent on their campaign contributions. Your consciousness is developed by their world's outlook. You are in their camp. They have bought your allegiance, not your vote on an issue, which is technically what we mean bribery. But if the point is that the current campaign finance situation, unleashed by Citizens United, is leading to massive political corruption in the sense that the Congress now is working overwhelmingly on behalf of the wealthy and the powerful and ignoring the needs of working families, the answer to your question is absolutely right. So here you have the American people are saying, raise the minimum wage. And Congress is saying, the Republican leadership, no, we can't do that. But we will cut Social Security and we will cut Medicare. But we don't want that, say the people. But that is what the Koch brothers want, and that is what the Business Roundtable wants, and those are the folks who determine what Washington does.
Susan, in Floyd, Virginia, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, thank you both for all you do. Senator Sanders, my question is, why is President Obama selling out the American public by pushing fast track for the TPP? Have you and others tried to lobby him to change his mind? And what can we do to stop it? And what are the odds it can be derailed?
Okay, good question. Let me be very honest with you. I like Barack Obama, and I work with him on many issues, and I think lately, in terms of Keystone, in terms of Cuba, in terms of immigration, and other areas, he has shown a boldness that I have not seen in a few years, and I applaud that. But, as Susan indicates, there is an area where, in my view, he is dead wrong, and that is this Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think anybody who looks at the history of trade policy in America over the last 30 or so years will find that it has been a dismal failure in terms of what it has done to the middle class and working class of this country. NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China have resulted in thousands of factories shutting down in America, moving to China, moving to other low-wage countries, and millions of American workers have lost their jobs. That's the simple reality. And what ends up happening is we are now in a race to the bottom with other low-wage countries, where companies say to their workers, well, you know what? You don't want to take a cut in wages? You don't want to take a cut in your health care benefits? Okay, we're moving to China, and we can get people there to work a lot lower than you can. Now, this trade agreement, this Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, among many other things, opens up trade with Korea, with South Korea, where the minimum wage is 56 cents an hour. Do I think American workers should be competing against people who make as low as 56 cents an hour? No, I don't. So to answer Susan's question, some of us are working very, very hard. The place where we have the chance to defeat this is what they call fast track, which will require 60 votes in the Senate. I just met with Rosa DeLauro and Pete DeFazio and other members of the House who are working equally hard, and I think we have a chance to beat it. There are some right-wing Republicans who, for a variety of their own reasons, are also opposed to fast track. We hope to form a coalition, and with luck, we will be able to stop it.
Leland in Aurora, Colorado. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, how are you today, gentlemen?
Good.
Great.
First off, thank you. I know this is fast-paced, so I'm going to talk fast. Excuse me. Yourself, Tom, Mike, the lady from Democracy Now!, my generation progressives, David Packman the next. Most respect. Senator Sanders, yourself, Senator Warren, others like you. Great respect. You say what you think. You think what I...
Leland, we got less than a minute. Can you get to your question?
Okay, I don't think America's going to stand up and do a network by 2016. Network with Peter Finch.
Leland, what's your question?
What the hell is this? I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay?
What's your question, Leland?
It's going to happen by 16, 18, or 20. But that's what's going to happen in America.
Okay, I'm sorry. Leland just wanted to rant. It said that his question was, what can people do to get you to run for president?
Well, as I've said many times, it's something that I am considering. Running for president is a difficult decision, and if I do it, we have to do it well. We have to have almost an unprecedented grassroots effort in 50 states in this country. When you take on the Koch brothers and Wall Street and the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies, that's no small thing, and they have unlimited resources. So I'll be in New Hampshire actually tomorrow night. I'll be in Iowa in a couple of weeks. We're talking to a whole lot of people, and we'll make a decision when we have to, but it's something that I am looking at.
That is absolutely great. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting. Be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov, and you can find it. He's got a very active Facebook page as well. Put Senator Sanders in over at Facebook.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
And today is FDR's birthday. FDR clips throughout the show for the day, and we'll be talking about FDR in the second hour. Stick around.
We have not come thus far without a struggle, and I assure you that we cannot go further without a struggle.
It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting with Senator Sanders and Rudy in Riverside, Illinois. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Senator, what are the chances of making much-needed improvements to Medicare and Social Security, like dental care with Medicare and increasing the survivor's benefit on Social Security? Many seniors do not have life insurance. I've seen numerous ads from insurance companies offering life insurance to seniors, 70 to 85. Can we make some progress in this area?
Thanks very much for that important question, Rudy. The fact of the matter is I think you've indicated, there are millions of seniors I know in my own state of Vermont and all over this country who are hurting. They're hurting financially. In the last number of years, the cost of living adjustments, the COLAs that they have received have been minimal. Several years they were zero. Meanwhile, seniors are paying more for prescription drugs. Cost of drugs are going up. Many of them are in the donut hole of Medicare Part D. They have to heat their homes on cold days like today in Vermont. And they need to eat, and that's expensive as well. And people are juggling their budgets. So here's what's going on, Rudy. I am the ranking member of the Budget Committee, and I will tell you that a week from, I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday, there's going to be a hearing in Washington. And the hearing is going to be part of the beginning of the Republican effort to try not to increase Social Security benefits, not to make Medicare a stronger program for seniors, but to cut those programs. And I'm sorry to have to tell you that, but that is the reality. In my view, what we have right now is the reality that Social Security has about $2.6 trillion in its trust fund, can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 18 to 19 years. And if we lift the cap on taxable income, which is right now at $118,000, and you start at a floor of $250,000, you can extend the life of Social Security for decades, and you can expand benefits, which is what Rudy is talking about. But I wanted to tell all of the listeners that what the Republicans are about is doing this year what they did in the House last year, is to cut Medicare and maybe end it as we know it, massive cuts in Medicaid, massive cuts in education, nutrition programs, environmental protection. And then what they want to do is expand military spending and give tax breaks to the rich and large corporations. That, in a nutshell, is their agenda. And the American people have got to stand up and say, sorry, you're not going to do that. We have to do quite the contrary. We have to expand Social Security, not cut it.
Diana in Poynette, Wisconsin, listening on the mic.
Hi.
Hey, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thanks for taking my call. My question is, after the Citizens United thing that was just the worst thing that could ever happen, the Republicans, especially Tea Party Republicans, have gone out and depleted Democrats' only source of income as far as fighting back, like unions and stuff like that. We have no money. I'm from Wisconsin, and let me tell you, I've been here 60-something years, and I've never seen anything so horrible in my whole life. I call editors of newspapers. I try everything. They have newspapers that John Nichols writes into that no longer go out to anybody except in Dane County, Wisconsin. You know, people aren't getting informed, and there's no money to inform them.
Well, Diana raises a very important issue, and that is, Tom, a lot of journalists and others will say, well, yes, the Koch brothers do have a lot of money, but there's money on the left and unions have money. Yeah, unions have money. But when you look at the dollar amount that is involved, nobody has the kind of money that the Koch brothers have, who are the second wealthiest family in America. And on top of everything else, what Koch brothers are about, as I mentioned earlier, is not just funding campaigns. They have an information network. They have control or partnership with dozens and dozens of right-wing organizations all over this country that get on television, get on the radio, do newsletters, and they are a very powerful force. And Diana's point about how we get information out, wow, that is a very important point. And that's why I congratulate you and the other progressive talk show hosts who got outnumbered. And what do we say is, 95% of talk radio is extreme right-wing?
Yeah, at least.
So you get, 5% talking to working people about the issues that are important to them. And we just have to keep fighting. And I would, again, as Tom often mentions, we have a very active social media network at sanders.senate.gov. We have very good email newsletters. Please contact us, and we'll try to provide you with as much information as we can.
Glenn in Portland, Oregon. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
I'm sorry, did you say me?
Yes, Glenn, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Senator. Concerning tax reform and the middle-class economics, don't you agree that it would be better to push for minimum wage over earned income tax credits because of who gets tagged to pay for it? Thank you.
Well, Glenn, I think we should do both. The federal minimum wage, as listeners know, is now $7.25 an hour, and that is a starvation wage. And in terms of inflation, accounted for dollars significantly lower than it used to be. People obviously can't live on $7.25 an hour. The American people want to see the minimum wage raised to a living wage. A number of states have gone forward independently of the federal government, and we're fighting hard to see the federal government move. There is massive opposition from Republicans, but we're going to continue that fight. But when we talk about policy helping workers, it's not just raising the minimum wage. I'll give you another area where we can make significant progress, and the president has the capability of doing that through executive order. And I have just yesterday, along with Senator Patty Murray of Washington State, sent him a letter which had a number of senators on board that letter. And this is what we said. We said that in America right now, you have an absurd situation regarding overtime. When people hear overtime, they say, well, if I work more than 40 hours a week, I get time and a half. Yeah, but there are whole lots of people who are excluded from that important benefit. So right now, you have a situation where you can be a quote-unquote supervisor at McDonald's, meaning that, you are telling two people what to do or keeping an eye on two other workers or three other workers. you are working 50 or 60 hours a week and you're making $27,000 a year, you don't get overtime because you're a quote-unquote supervisor. And we have millions of people in that category. So what we have got to do is raise the threshold by which people are eligible for overtime, which is now somewhere about $23,600. You got to raise that way up there to well over $50,000. That will mean that when people are working 50 or 60 hours a week, they're getting time and a half after 40 hours, and they're bringing home some income. So raising the minimum wage is important. Dealing with overtime is important. Expanding the earned income tax credit is important. Now, how do you pay for these things? Well, when you have this much income and wealth inequality, where all of the new income is going to the wealthiest people in this country, where the tax rates for the wealthy have gone down and are significantly lower than where they used to be, where you have all kinds of corporate loopholes, so that we're losing about $100 billion every year from companies that are stashing their money on the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and other tax havens. What you have to say to the wealthy and large corporations, sorry, you're going to have to start paying your fair share of taxes so we can protect working families, we can protect the middle class, we can invest in our infrastructure, we can invest in education, and we can begin to make government work for all of the people rather than wealthy campaign contributors.
Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Norma? Norma? We have just a minute to the break.
Well, Tom, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you?
I hear you just fine. Yeah, quick question,
here.
Please.
I'm here.
Your question?
I'm here, Tom. I'm here, Tom.
Can you ask your question of the senator, please?
Yes. Are you going to try to stop this cut of disability? I need to get work done in the house, and I can't get anything done without any money. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yep.
I can hear you very loudly and clearly. And Norma, thanks very much for the question. I'm assuming that you receive disability benefits.
She's no longer on the line.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a hearing, not this coming week, but the following week, on just this issue. And the Republicans are determined to cut Social Security. I'm not quite sure the approach that they will use. It may be to cut disability benefits. It may be to cut all of Social Security. But to answer Norma's question, we're going to fight back vigorously. There are tens of millions of people on Social Security. Many of them are barely making it economically. It would be an absolute act of cruelty to be cutting their benefits. So we're going to fight back, and we hope, in fact, to expand benefits, not cut them.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And you can sign up for the Bernie Buzz newsletter over at sanders.senate.gov. Check out, he's got a great news site as well, and check out his activities over on Facebook, too. Welcome back. Mark in Chico, California, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish Network. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello. Senator Sanders, do you have any idea if they're still going to cut all the jobs at the post office, set for closures, and what we can still do about it?
Yep. Thanks very much, Mark. We just met a couple of days ago with almost all of the postal union presidents. The plan that they have right now is to slow mail delivery standards, which means when you drop a letter into the postal box, it's going to take longer to get to its destination. And then in a couple of months, I think in April, they begin the process of shutting down 82 processing plants, which will kind of cement a slower mail delivery system. I think that is a disastrous idea for so many reasons. Not to mention that it would be the loss of some 15,000 decent-paying jobs in the Postal Service, but also become part of a death spiral. When you slow down mail delivery service, fewer people will use the Postal Service. They'll lose more money, and on it goes. Now, the good news is that in recent years, in terms of operating expenses, the Postal Service actually has been making money. fact, they've been doing pretty well with packages lately. The problem that they have, as we've talked about very often, uniquely of any government agency or any other entity, major corporate entity in the United States around the world, they're stuck with a $5.5 billion burden, $5.5 billion every year, to pay for future health retiree benefits. And there's about $50 billion in this account. And this legislation passed under Bush requires them to come up with $5.5 billion every year. And that is the reason why when you read the newspapers, they're losing money. That is the reason. That's the only reason. So, to make a long story short, we have legislation in, working with other senators, to get rid of that burden. We also have an amendment that we'll probably introduce in the next major bill that comes to the floor, the Homeland Security Act, which will call for a moratorium on these slowdown of mail delivery standards, plus a moratorium in preventing the shutting down of these 82 processing plants. So that's the plan. We look forward to a lot of support from not only people who work within the postal system, but the American people.
Senator, we have only 40 seconds. Is there any way, I believe that $5 billion is going to expire in the next couple of years, isn't it? Maybe.
Well, the theory is, I think that is the case. And right now, Tom, they have $50 billion in that account.
Wow.
And it earns interest every single year. So they have enough money to deal with future retiree health benefits for the indefinite future. And right now is not the time to ask the Postal Service to keep coming up with another $5.5 billion. So we have legislation along with other senators to end that today.
Yeah, it seems that they could draw on that to. Well, they can't draw on it, can they? This is a legislative issue.
They can. They can use that for other. That would be my idea. But the bottom line is, if you exclude that burden, people say, "Oh, the Postal Service is going broke." No, actually, they're making a reasonable amount of money, excluding that provision, $5.5 billion every year.
Right, that Bush-era poison pill.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Senator Bernie Sanders with us, taking your calls in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders right after this.
Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
Welcome back. It's FDR's birthday. Tip of the hat to Harvey Kaye, historian Harvey Kaye, and author of the best book on Thomas Paine out there, who kept me up to date on the fact that yesterday was Thomas Paine's birthday. Today is FDR's. And Senator Bernie Sanders is with us, our Brunch with Bernie Hour. And Rick in Alberta, Canada, listening on Sirius Satellite Radio. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello. Yes, Senator. It's we have an election coming up this year in Canada, and I'm just wondering if you have any hopes at fighting back against voter suppression and that. We have our own here. Harper's called it the Fair Elections Act, which is, he learned from the GOP. So do you have any hopes for that? And one thing is, we can't put this off until the last minute, can we?
No. I always get nervous when people talk about fair elections. That probably means voter suppression or Clean Air Act, or what was it called? What was Bush's proposal?
Yeah, the Clean Air Act. Yeah, there was the Clear Skies Act, was it something like that?
No, it was the Clean Something Act, which was the pollutant, to increase pollution. These guys are very good with phraseology, but, whether it is Canada, whether it's the United States, the oligarchy, the billionaire class, understands that in many ways their ideology and their programs are extremely unpopular. So you win elections by making sure that you significantly outspend your opponents, and that's what Citizens United is about. And then the other thing is, as Rick mentions, and I don't know anything about what's going on in Canada in that regard, but in this country I do know that many Republican governors going out of their way to make it harder and harder for people to vote under the guise that they're dealing with voter fraud when we have virtually no voter fraud in this country. And anyone who commits voter fraud should be severely punished. That's a serious crime. But it is not a serious problem. Not a serious problem. But they are working very hard to make it harder for the elderly, for the poor to vote, people who may not have driver's licenses, or other forms of government ID. And that's the way they win elections. And the answer to Rick is absolutely. We're going to work aggressively to end all forms of voter suppression. In a democracy, we want to see everybody participate and not see people excluded because of onerous restrictions.
Senator, if I may, apropos of that, there are 600,000 African Americans in Florida who have felony convictions and therefore can't vote. It's around 400,000 in South Carolina. It's a couple 100,000 in North Carolina. Maybe I have those reversed. It's hundreds of thousands in Georgia. The estimates are that in most of the southern states, if they did away with the you can't vote if you're a felon after, and I'm talking about long after people have paid their debt to society, if they did away with that, all those states would flip to blue. Is there any effort to undo these felons can't vote laws?
It's not an area where I am expert on, Tom, but the answer is yes. I do know that there's a lot of discussion about it. And that is just another example on top of all of these ID card businesses where lower-income people are kept from voting. And it is absolutely an issue that we have got to look into.
Yeah, I think it's the new Jim Crow. Bert in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, I'm referencing an article by Lanhee Chen that he's claiming that disability, SSDI, will run out at the end of next year, and if nothing done, that the benefits will be cut by 20%. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But here's the point. I don't know if he mentions it or not. This is not an unusual problem. As you know, the Social Security Fund has two major parts of it. The larger one is for elderly people. It's retirement benefits. Then we have the disability fund. For many, many years, what has happened is when one of those funds has run short, money, what they call it is readjustment. Money goes from one of the funds to the other fund. This has been done 11 times in recent years. So while the disability fund will be running out of money in 2016, the other fund has the combined as about a $2.5 trillion surplus. So historically what we have done without any partisan bickering at all is simply transfer money from one fund to the other, and that is exactly what we should be doing right now. What the Republicans are doing is looking at this as an opportunity to either cut disability funding, disability benefits, or else to cut Social Security benefits. But we have seen this problem. It is a technical problem, a bureaucratic problem, because there is significant sums of money in the trust fund unto itself. Just a question of transferring money from one part of the fund to the other part of the fund.
Didn't they change the House rules so that they can't do that?
Well, they did. I think they left themselves a little bit of a loophole. But as I mentioned earlier, there'll be a hearing in the Senate and on the Budget Committee on this, not next week, but the week after, with just this issue will be discussed. Bottom line here, Social Security Trust Fund, $2.6 trillion surplus, can pay out every benefit owed to all Americans, whether it's the disability fund or the retirement fund for the next 18 years. So what we should do is what we have done 11 times in recent years, 4 times under Ronald Reagan, simply put money from one part of the fund into the other part of the fund. The Republicans are trying to create a crisis where a crisis does not exist.
Senator, about 45 seconds to wrap up the hour. Your thoughts for the week?
All right. There is a lot that is going on. I think the Republican agenda is becoming clearer and clearer in a party that is largely funded by the billionaire class and the Koch brothers. We have got to stand together with our parents and our grandchildren and make sure that Social Security and disability benefits not only are not cut, but where needed are expanded. We have got to be mindful that millions of families today are struggling as to how to send their kids to college. We have to address that issue. And we have to end the fact that the United States today has more income and wealth disparity than any other major nation on earth. That is not what America is supposed to be about. Bottom line is, the only way we change these things is when people get involved in the political process.
Senator Sanders, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And for carrying this standard all these years. You are great. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Okay. We'll be back. Anything Goes Friday right after this, although I have a few rants I want to share with you. You won't believe what's going on in Nicaragua and that Grover Norquist is involved in.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.